Hello, my name is Nader Dabit. I'm going to be here talking about JavaScript Futurism. So it's really great to be at Chain React. I've been in the React Native world for about 2 years now, and I've spoken to a lot of people here and kind of gotten to know people. I've talked to them on my podcast, over Twitter, on GitHub. So it's really been interesting to kind of actually connect these faces with these avatars and kind of talk to these people in real life. And I have a booth upstairs with React Native training, so if you'd like to come speak with me, I'll be there later today and then probably in and out tomorrow. But before we get started, I'd like to ask everyone in the crowd to do something, kind of help me out real quick. I know that we just got back from a break, but if you don't have like a computer sitting on your lap, I'd ask you to please stand up for just a second and just kind of everyone stand up that can stand up if you don't mind. All right, thank you. And this will be over just very quickly. So can you go ahead and all start clapping? We'll all clap at once. Let's do this. All right, we can all sit down now. Thank you. All right, now I can go home and tell everyone I got a standing ovation at Chain React. So. So let me go ahead and get my slides kind of back working again. All right. So again, my name is Nader Dabit. What I do right now is I do React Native training and React Native consulting. I've been working with React Native since around March of 2015 at various companies and in various capacities. But now I kind of focus on one-on-one consulting with companies, kind of helping them get React Native implemented in their companies, but also doing training where large companies or startups are kind of moving, most of the customers that we deal with, they're moving from native development like iOS and Android into React Native, so it's kind of a new world for most of them. Whereas a lot of times JavaScript developers, they're able to kind of pick React Native up a little easier. So what I work on right now as well is we have an open source GitHub repository for our company. Binoy Patel and Monty Thakar are both here as well, and we kind of all help maintain a couple of libraries like React Native Elements, Create XP app, and a few starter projects for people that kind of are looking to learn how to do certain things, specific things like Redux and things like that. And when I originally submitted a talk for this conference, it was kind of going to be more React Native specific. And I'll be completely honest, this is going to be probably the least technical talk of this entire conference. In fact, this talk could have just as easily been called, instead of JavaScript Futurism, it could have been called just Futurism in general, or Programming Futurism, or Career Futurism. And that's kind of really what we're going to be going more into. Okay, there we go. I'm not sure what's going on with that, but anyway. So in addition to that, also have React Native radio podcast. If anyone is interested in React Native and you want to kind of listen to that, we have about 2 years worth of episodes, I think about 70 episodes. We talk about just everything having to do with React Native. But anyway, getting back to the talk, when I introduced my original talk, it was called Working with the File System. If you actually look at the app, you'll see a description for that talk still there. I only changed it recently to JavaScript Futurism. And the reason is, to be completely honest, I've been working so much with React Native lately that I've kind of gotten burnt out on the whole, on talking about React Native, because I talk about it on my podcast, I talk about it at work, I talk about it literally on the phone and on Skype and just all the time. And something that I'm really passionate about is React Native, but something that I'm just as passionate about is Futurism and kind of how I've been applying it the last couple of years, not only in my own personal life, but in other people's lives that I've kind of worked with, and I've seen a positive effect. So I figured this would be just kind of a nice break from what we're kind of used to hearing normally at a conference like this. So we'll go ahead and get this started now. If you want to follow me on Twitter, GitHub, or Medium, I'm on Dabit3, that's like my username, I guess you'd say, across all the different areas. So I do a lot of blogging on Medium, not only under Dabit3, but also under React Native Training. So to kick the talk off, I want to kind of show this slide. And basically, it's a quote by David Bowie. And it says, "The future belongs to those that can hear it coming." And after doing a little bit of more research, I found that the actual real quote is, "Tomorrow belongs to those that can hear it coming." And this is a slide that I kind of stole from Gerd Leonard. And Gerd Leonard is one of my favorite futurists. And he has a lot of material out there. And I'll kind of talk about him more later on. So the definition of futurism, you've probably heard the word futurist or futurism thrown around. And you may be wondering how this applies to JavaScript and React Native. I'm going to try to kind of make that happen towards the end of this talk. But until then, I'm going to kind of give an introduction to futurism in general. So the definition, if you kind of look online and kind of look the actual definition up, you're going to see something like this: a style of art, literature, music, and a theory of art and life in which violence, power, speed, mechanization of machines, mechanization or machines, and hostility to the past or to the traditional forms of expression were advocated or portrayed. Now that's kind of a good academic, I guess, explanation of futurism. But for me, and kind of what I've seen and like what resonates with me is more of a definition like this. And this is something I kind of came up with. An obsession with what the future looks like, how it will affect social, economic, and technological and political structures and ecosystems. And you'll also see futurism described or called, I guess, futurology, future studies, and a few other things. But I'm going to kind of bundle all of those things into the blanket name of futurism for this talk. So I guess the idea of what a futurist does, they try to predict the future, of course. So it's not about like where the puck is today. It's like, where's the puck going to be when it's time for me to actually, take advantage of the situation. So keeping up with futurism, there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. You can just kind of read books and kind of follow people that are doing innovative things, or you can actually find people that call themselves futurists. And these people, a lot of times, actually do futurist things like as their like full-time job. But a lot of these people also have regular jobs. So you may have heard of Ray Kurzweil. He was hired directly by Larry Page at Google to do like artificial intelligence and machine learning and things like that. He's also an author that kind of has a lot of this talk about the singularity and stuff like that, which doesn't really resonate that much with me, but it's pretty interesting stuff. Michio Kaku, he's someone that's very well known probably in the scientific community, and you may have even seen him out there. One of my favorite books by Michio Kaku, and one that's kind of helped shape my decisions in my life up until now, and I feel like I've had a positive impact on things that I've done that have been successful, is a book called Physics of the Future. And in Physics of the Future, he interviews like 300 scientists, doctors, software engineers, just innovative people in general, and kind of talks to them and gets their specific domain-specific specialized knowledge and lets them tell him like where they see the future in their given field. And he documents all that stuff in this book. And it's a really, really good book. And I would recommend you checking it out if you're interested in this type of stuff. And then we have Dr. Amy Zalman, and she was the CEO and the president of the World Future Society in the past, and she has a company that kind of does futurist consulting. But really my favorite futurist is Gerd Leonard. And Gerd Leonard is the guy here on the top left. And if you kind of listen to some of Gerd's talks, you're going to be like, this guy is kind of wacky, and he is kind of crazy. And most of the really good futurists, if you actually listen to what they say, and you kind of watch what they talk about and read their books, the better futurists are kind of crazy, because they'll just start saying things that really are kind of crazy, but some of them like might resonate with you. And some of them actually, you'll be like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it like, plants things in your brain, makes you kind of start thinking outside the box, I guess you would say. So keeping up with futurists, for me, I kind of follow these people. I follow their writing, I read their books, podcasts, blogs, that type of stuff. And I would say Gerd Leonard actually has made a pretty big impact on me, like shaped kind of where I've taken my career in the last 5 years or so. And I'll kind of talk about that a little more in just a second. So again, like why are we talking about futurism at a React Native conference? And what does it have to do with JavaScript? And what does it have to do especially with React Native? And I think that's the very last part of this talk we're going to really go into depth about. And I guess really what how that's going to correlate with React Native and JavaScript. We're going to be talking about predictions that we could maybe make today that are going to affect where our careers or where our companies are going to be like 2 to 10 years from now. Like where's the language going? Where are the platforms headed? Where are these big companies investing their time and energy? And where these, what new projects are being adopted by these growing companies? So to kind of understand all of this, I'm going to give a little bit of background about myself. I live and I'm from Mississippi. I was born and raised in Mississippi, and I actually live there now. I've lived in other places. I've lived in Los Angeles. I've actually traveled quite a bit to the Middle East and lived in the West Bank of Palestine, where my father's from, during the summers as I was growing up. But the environment that's kind of shaped my personality as I was growing up and kind of who I was Mississippi in general. So that's kind of, gives a lot of, I guess, background about like, where I'm from and like why this is gonna matter, what I'm gonna talk about. In Mississippi, there's not a lot of opportunity there. So I've had the opportunity now to travel around the world and meet really cool people and, go to really nice places and stuff like that. But most people in Mississippi are born and they don't really ever get those opportunities. They're kind of born into a social circle, they're born into a family, and almost overwhelmingly, you see the exact same patterns like emerging and kind of continuing, through generations. A lot of those things have to do with religion and politics, and they also have to do with their view on like learning and stuff like that. So basically what I'm trying to say is like these circumstances and these things kind of are cyclical, and they go from generation to generation to generation, but they also go from social circle to social circle. So even if someone's born into a family that's progressive or a family that's successful or whatever, they might even be drawn into some other social circles with these other people that kind of don't let them kind of progress maybe in a way that they could if they were maybe in a different area. And Mississippi ranks last in all of the good things and first in all of the bad things. So we rank first in teen pregnancy. We rank first in diabetes and things like STDs and stuff like that. And we rank last in health, physical exercise, education, income, and all of the things that kind of bring a good quality of life to people. So something I've done over the last couple of years is I've had the opportunity to work with people in Mississippi to kind of see what we can do to kind of bring about a change and bring opportunity to some of these areas that aren't really seeing the opportunity like they would if they were in another part of the world. And something I've done is I've gone and I've spoken about futurism to schools and different meetups and stuff like that. And I've actually had the opportunity to take some of these people on and kind of mentor them over the last couple of years. And I've seen a few of them turn out really well. Like they've gone from not having a future to maybe making more money than like anybody else in their family's ever made. And everything that I've kind of worked with them in the capacity has been software development, because that's kind of what I know right now and that's kind of what I do. But it of course could apply to anything really. But that's kind of like what I know, so that's kind of how I mentor these people in general. So the reason I'm thinking like, so if talking about this stuff can positively affect my life in a way that it has, and it affects these people's lives in the way that it has with them, maybe I can apply that to a talk and kind of bring it here. And this is really just kind of an experiment, to be completely honest, this talk. I'm hoping by the end of it, we'll all kind of have learned a little something. But basically, so we're presenting some of these ideas, and we'll talk about them a lot more. And we're going to talk about these ideas now to a group of people who are kind of, in a different part of their life. A lot of you people are educated. A lot of you people have, been successful, or maybe you're just getting started or whatever. But I think futurism is something that, like if anyone in any capacity wants to kind of open their mind and kind of learn new stuff, taking it seriously, maybe reading a couple books about it and like listening to what I have to say might benefit them. So bottom line is accurately predicting trends can dramatically improve chances of success and lift people out of poverty. That's like, something that is kind of just a statement that if you thought about it, it just makes a lot of sense, right? But even somewhat accurately predicting some of these changes can make a drastic impact. You don't have to look 10 years from now and be like, this is what's going to happen. But maybe you can place a few bets, and if you hit one of those, then you're going to be substantially better off. So you don't have to get everything right. You really don't have to get one or two things right. So at the age of 29, which is kind of when I got into programming about 6 or 7 years ago, I had done a lot of things. I had been in real estate. I had worked at a restaurant as a bartender. I had done importing and exporting. I had even owned a liquor store that I still own to this day, that I have a partner there. But nothing I ever did, I never woke up and went to work and was like really happy about it. So at the age of 28 or 29, I wanted to figure out what I wanted to do. So I started listening to Gerd Leonard, started reading some books. I made a calculated move, and I was like, okay, programming is something that I should look into getting in because it's growing, there's a lot of opportunity there, and luckily in the process I kind of found my passion. So now I do go to work every day and I really enjoy what I'm doing. So my idea at the time, and kind of something that I've been doing, is kind of transferring this idea to people within Mississippi, getting them exposed to these ideas. And now hopefully we can take this one step further and maybe apply it to programming in general. So how do you predict the future? Well, if you really look closely enough, there are ways to at least predict the future today. And we'll talk about some of these hacks to peer into the future. And right now they do kind of exist. And how do we kind of go about hearing the future, as in that first slide? So back in the day, like even not long ago, like 20 or so years ago, if you wanted to kind of connect with people and mentor from top innovators, think like people, Ben Franklin and Grace Hopper, these people that have created these amazing things and done amazing things with their lives. It was, it was almost, the chances of you being connected with those people and being able to talk to them was almost non-existent, right? You'd have to be maybe in their social circle. Maybe you were like an aristocrat, maybe you were like really wealthy or something like that to kind of be able to kind of talk to these people. But in general, nobody really had that opportunity. But today, now we can actually get on Twitter and talk to the creator of JavaScript if we want, and he might respond. We can get on GitHub and follow someone and kind of see the code that they're writing and the decisions that are being made in real time. And these are kind of all symptomatic, or these all have to do with programming in general, and this is kind of like our realm or my realm, but you can take this out of programming in general. There's other things like ResearchGate for scientists, and there's other networks for doctors and all this other stuff. But this is something that we've kind of gotten used to doing, and it's not like that exciting anymore. But when you really think about it, it's pretty amazing that we can actually go on these platforms and interact with these top thinkers. These people are making like decisions that are going to change the world down the road, right? We might not see those effects right this second, but they are happening. And kind of bringing that to the forefront and talking about it, I think is like a really big part of like being able to kind of see the future, because you're going to be making decisions on what you're going to be doing with your future. So you need to be kind of aware of what the top people are doing and kind of maybe latching on to what they're doing. So there's like a few parts to this theory, and this is the first part of it. If you can identify the top innovators or thinkers in a given field that you would like to excel in or be part of, you can follow these people, latch on to what they're doing, and you can kind of sort of maybe predict the future. But really, and that's only one part of it. In reality, there's a lot of smart people that come up with really amazing things that never get anywhere because nobody's ever heard of them, or maybe they don't have like the social like network that they need like to kind of talk about this stuff, or they're not cool enough to kind of be able to like go out there and like get like 1 million followers or something like that, which is a shame. But it is reality, because really it's not only about being innovative, but it's also having the critical mass. And how do projects achieve critical mass? And I think lately we've kind of seen the answer to that is pretty apparent, right? If a company is like Google or Facebook, a big company, it has a lot of money and time and effort and resources to put behind a project, it's more likely to succeed, even if it's the second best option, right? Because people are gonna look at that as a more respectable project maybe, because they don't maybe have enough knowledge about the project to kind of dive into the internals, so they're kind of using their own, they're making that decision based on other things, right? Also, if someone maybe has like a large social network, so if you have like 20,000 followers, you might be able to come out with an innovation and get people to kind of go along with it and kind of get that innovation to continue. So the second part, I guess, is critical mass. And then really the third part of this is that project currently being used in critical or valuable situations in current companies, and is it being adopted by growing companies? So is that technology being picked up by the newest startups coming out of Y Combinator that are being funded? Because those are going to be companies that are going to be growing. Those are going to be the companies that are going to be contributing back to these libraries. They're going to be innovating and creating new things, and there's going to be job growth and opportunity there in the future. So one thing I've learned in the last 7 years as someone who came into programming late, doesn't have a college degree, doesn't have any formal education in programming, is that I'm not to the level yet where I can actually contribute to some of the conversations that I would like to contribute to, because I don't know. I'm not going to be able to go into a conversation about creating a new language and be able to say anything worth hearing. But there are some areas that I can kind of go into, but a lot of them I know for sure that I'm not there. But there is a way to kind of get around this, and it's kind of instead of like worrying about knowing everything, know whatever little things that you can know, and then maybe find the people that you kind of know are doing really awesome stuff that you trust, and kind of just latch on to what they're doing and kind of follow along with what they're doing. And that seems to have worked pretty well for me. Some of those people are actually here tonight. Some of those people have to do with programming. Some of them don't have anything to do with programming at all, for me at least. So I have like, just a random number of people that I kind of follow at any given time. So I guess what I can kind of now go into to kind of put all this into perspective is kind of what decisions did I make when I first got into programming, and how did I kind of make those decisions? And then if I could go back really to 2012, when I really first started getting into programming full time, what decisions would I have made differently then? And then maybe 5 years from now, if we could go back today, like what would be those same decisions that we would make? So for me, what I saw in 2012 was the speed of internet connections was increasing, the capacity and bandwidth and all of that was becoming, faster and better and more widespread around the world. Also noticed that programming was really hard. When I first started getting into it, I wanted to quit so many times. But normally when you get into something that's hard, everyone else is also going to think it's hard. So if you stick with it, of course, you kind of keep going, and then other people maybe fall away from it. So there's less competition, theoretically. I noticed that demand was increasing faster than supply as far as programmers in general. And this is more like this is coming from a consultant's point of view or an hourly worker's point of view. This isn't maybe really coming from someone that wants to like build the next big company's point of view. And that brings us to the next question. Do I want to build something like the next app that's going to make $1 billion, or do I want to focus on making money as a developer and being a consultant and maximizing that capacity? Back when the gold rush was happening in California, and you've probably heard this story about Levi's, and the idea is, do you want to kind of participate in the gold rush, or do you want to sell pickaxes in the gold rush? So you can think of now as all this opportunity is kind of like a gold rush of our own time. Do you want to go in and create the next $1 billion app, or do you want to maybe go in and kind of do your part and make a small percentage of that, which still might be enough money to be happy with? And for me, that's kind of the path I've taken. Also noticed that JavaScript was moving quickly, and many companies were looking more at having someone that can actually deliver as opposed to having an education. And for me, I didn't have an education, so this was very, it looked really good to me. Also, I noticed that programming seemed to be a results-driven field, and when you can kind of handle that yourself. If you want to go into a company and work really hard, you can be a results-driven person. So that also appealed to me. So what observations can we kind of make now in 2017 here today? Well, one of those things that we can look at is the platforms. And there's a lot of discussion about this today. But in my opinion, mobile is still, I mean, not in my opinion, everybody's opinion, mobile is still the dominant user interface right now. But I also believe it's going to continue to be into the foreseeable future. And I don't think that there's any worry about that, right? But there's still a conversation about whether web, hybrid, or native is better, right? We're here at a React Native conference, so we all believe in React Native, but there's really no clear winner yet. So for me, staying focused on mobile seems to be still a good bet right now. There are emerging platforms, though, and things to be looking at. So one of these is ARKit by Apple that was released recently, and they have a bunch of cool demos. I don't know if this demo is going to work, but maybe it will. And you've probably seen this if you've been on Twitter even once in the last 6 or 7 days. I think it's been all over the place. So augmented reality, virtual reality is going to be in demand, but we don't know what that's going to look like, really, right? It's still kind of undecided. Is it going to be on a phone or is it going to be on your glasses? We don't know yet. Voice and bots, that might be a good thing to kind of invest some of your time and your resources in. Also, rapidly expanding segments. Machine learning, AI, and data science is expanding like crazy. There's so much job opportunity there. There's so many opportunities to do stuff there, right? Something that might be going unrecognized a little bit, at least in my opinion, and it has been discussed, but I feel like it's a much bigger thing than kind of what maybe people are looking at it is using these platforms as a service as opposed to going in and becoming like a specialist at machine learning. So instead of worrying about is machine learning going to kind of take over everything, I'm looking at it more like I can still continue to build user interfaces, but I'll be able to build them on top of these other machine learning platforms that other people are using. I'll be able to build React Native apps and interact with things like Amazon that they're building and maybe some new startup that kind of comes up with some cool machine learning as a service. So I started playing around with AI and machine learning a little bit with Python. And just as a quick thing, if you want to do it, you can actually accomplish 90% of the stuff that you need to get done with just scikit-learn and Python. And all of these algorithms, if you kind of look and start reading books on TensorFlow, it might be kind of overwhelming, but you don't have to actually know any of those algorithms to kind of just get started with scikit. You literally can start doing image processing, image recognition, pattern recognition with just a book like Data Science from Scratch from O'Reilly or something like that. But definitely might be a good thing to kind of get into, of course. And then there's this prediction from A16Z, and this is more of a futurist type of prediction. It's called the end of cloud computing. And this guy, he basically is giving a really cool presentation on his opinion that cloud computing is already starting to go away. And that's kind of a crazy thing to say, but he makes the case for it there. And it has a lot to do with the Internet of Things. It has a lot to do with the fact that we're going to be seeing autonomous cars that have their own computers in there. A lot of things having to do with the Internet of Things in general. Drones, robots, all these things have the possibility to be their own data centers. So when is a company going to kind of take advantage of all this and kind of move this cloud computing away from the cloud into these devices? And also there's also a positive effect when it comes to speed and things like that. So what he says in that talk or in that presentation is, one way to predict the future is to subtract something that is important today and fill it with something else. In that talk, he kind of subtracted cloud computing as if it didn't exist, or if it never existed, and kind of filled it in. And what he filled it in was with the Internet of Things, and it does make sense because it seems to kind of already be happening. And this kind of brings us to the end of my talk, where we'll discuss some stuff about languages and syntax. So what is going to be the big thing 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and can we kind of figure that out? So JavaScript is already compiled in general. Everybody here isn't even writing JavaScript anymore probably. If you're doing any of the newer ES 2017 stuff, you're probably writing a configuration of Babel with Webpack and all this stuff, and you're not really writing the spec of JavaScript anymore. So the bottom line is we're already compiling JavaScript to the point where we're not really all writing the same language anymore. So if we're not writing the JavaScript anymore, why are we going to keep writing JS unless it is the best language for, for the actual problem we're trying to solve? And that's the question: is JavaScript the best language for what we're doing? And there's a lot of conversation about that. But bottom line is we're seeing things like Reason, Dart, Elm, and a lot of these innovative compile to JavaScript things coming out. And it has yet to be decided, but I totally believe that one day one of these is going to be kind of taking over, and it's going to win the battle in this regard, I guess you would say. So basically, we're going to see one of these languages win. We don't know what it is yet, but Reason seems to be pretty interesting. But I guess nobody really knows at this point. But bottom line, JavaScript isn't going away anytime soon. So it's so easy now to get into JavaScript, right? You just pop up in a browser and you start coding. It seems to be, just, of course, the easiest way for people to get into programming. And then there's a lot of resources online. So like that's kind of, I don't think JavaScript is going away anytime soon, but I believe it will go away. And what's going to happen is either we're going to be able to target as many platforms with JavaScript as we are able to target with JavaScript today with another language, or the web as we know it is going to die. So we're going to see some other platform kind of take over. Maybe it's going to be Ken Wheeler's new platform. Maybe it's going to be VR or AR. We don't know yet, but bottom line is when one of these platforms kind of takes over and dominates, JavaScript isn't going to be as ubiquitous as it is now. And in fact, in my opinion, one of the reasons that React Native has been successful at all is because of the wealth of developers that are able to kind of come into the ecosystem, right? If we were writing this stuff in C++ or something else like that, like you wouldn't see as many people interested in it, in my opinion, and kind of it evolving and stuff like that. So to end this talk, I'm going to go ahead and just show a quick slide. This is Ramallah, Palestine. This is where my dad is from, where I spend a lot of my time. And I love that place, so I figured I'd throw it on a slide. And you can find me on Dabit3 on Twitter, Medium, GitHub, and you can email me at dabit3@gmail.com if you ever want to talk. Thank you.